The time is finally here, my friends. Week one of the regular season. And you know what that means. We're talking stardom. We're talking sit 'em. Really, must starts and must sits for week one as we get ready to kick this off. Keep in mind, I am not giving you Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry and Alvin Kamara. You play those guys, right? I hope you're not coming in here looking for, well, God, I don't know. I hope he says that Devontae Adams is a must start. Start Devontae Adams. Start Tyreek Hill. Forget about the matchup. That's not what we're here for. We're here to talk about players you drafted. Doesn't have to be in the late rounds. Might even be the third round. Got a couple of those. The 6th, 7th, 8th round. Great spots or awful spots. But if you're playing if you drafted your blue chip guys at the top of the draft, you're playing your blue chip guys, good or bad matchup. Because the reason you drafted them is because, in essence, they are matchup proof. They're going to produce every single week. So I hope you're as excited as I am. Week one is finally here. Let's kick it off in a big way. Must starts, must sits. Let's go. Oh, and if you still aren't playing at Underdog Fantasy, you're just letting life pass you by. You'll get $25 when you sign up using the promo code Awesemo and get to compete in some monster tournaments that pay out over $1 million up top, or the puppy that pays $100K to first and is only $5 to enter. Best Ball is the greatest version of fantasy right now, and Underdog's by far the best place to play it. Use the promo code Awesemo when you go to underdogfantasy.com and start cashing, baby. Now, I'm not saying Sermon isn't going to get his fair share of touches to begin the year, but Mostert will start and should see no shortage of opportunities against the Lions defense that allowed 135 rushing yards per game and ranked 27th in run defense DVOA according to Football Outsiders last year. Detroit was the worst pass defense in the entire league too, so if you have George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and probably even Deebo Samuel, you're starting them. But I'm particularly interested in the rushing attack because the game script sets up perfectly for San Francisco to run the ball down the Lions' throats. As 7.5-point favorites with a 26.5-point implied total, Kyle Shanahan won't need to get pass happy in order to throttle a Detroit team that will struggle to score points. When this team was healthy back in 2019, only the Ravens ran the ball at a higher clip than the Niners. I've loved Mostert as a late round pick all year long, and I love him even more in week one. Don't forget, the biggest issue with Mostert has been injuries. Always has been. So we're damn well going to play him while he's healthy. This is too easy, but in case you were somehow on the fence, start James Robinson in week one. The Jaguars are a rare favorite, but this game could stay competitive with the Texans getting only a field goal at home. We've still yet to see what Robinson's workload looks like under Urban Meyer, but he's the undisputed starting back for Jacksonville, and he's squaring off against the Texans squad that allowed more rushing yards than any other team in 2020 with over 160 yards per game allowed. Houston also coughed up 24 rushing touchdowns, good for second most in football, and we know damn well this team won't be improved from last year. The game script couldn't have been written any better for Robinson, who without Travis Etienne won't only be the leading rushing down back, but should also handle the bulk of third down duties out of the backfield. It is worth noting that Duke Johnson was working out for the Jaguars, but until we get any word on that, we'll assume that James Robinson is the clear third down back going forward. It's hard to say Robinson's going to be a 19 touch per game guy like he was as a rookie, but that won't matter on Sunday. My favorite part about Robinson is that he should have much more touchdown equity than he had last year, now that there's an inexperienced but high upside quarterback in Trevor Lawrence and bolstered weapons in the passing game. Get him into your lineups and don't second guess it. James Robinson is a stud play for week one. Buccaneers receivers couldn't have drawn a better matchup to kick off the season. Not only is this high-powered Bucs team facing a Dallas defense that allowed an absurd 30 points per game and third worst 34 passing touchdowns last year, but they'll be facing a Dallas offense that can score points in bunches. So long as the Cowboys don't get behind too early, this game could absolutely develop into a shootout. Tampa Bay has the highest implied total on the slate and is coming off a season where they had a top 10 pass play percentage on the year. In the 8 games Antonio Brown played along Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, all 3 of them were able to have some huge games. Brown and Evans averaged right around 8 targets a week, while Godwin was just below 7. The truth is you're never going to know which one of these receivers is going to pop off from week to week, but if you drafted them, you already knew that, which is why there's no way you aren't starting them in week one. I do expect the Cowboys defense to be better after rebuilding the linebacking core and introducing 5 new starters, but they literally couldn't be any worse than 2020. My money's on Brady, and Vegas agrees. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson combined for 47 deep ball targets last year, which is pretty damn solid considering Teddy Bridgewater was under center. But it also speaks to what type of offense Matt Rule and Joe Brady are trying to run in Carolina. In the 6 games Bridgewater started for the Saints in 2019, he had the lowest deep ball percentage in the league. And it makes sense, right? When you can lean on Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, why look to do anything else? And with Sam Darnold last year in New York, he had no reliable downfield threats on a weekly basis and an offensive line that couldn't protect him. No quarterback was pressured at a higher rate than Darnold last year or in 2019. Meanwhile, Bridgewater had one of the lowest pressure rates in the league. So take Darnold, who escaped the death grip of the Jets and Adam Gase, goes to a team with a competent coach and offensive coordinator, has legitimate weapons at every position, good enough pass blocking, and gets to face his former team at home in week 1, then tell me that isn't a recipe for success for Moore and Anderson. I surely think it is. And the Jets secondary should be pretty awful again, coming off a season where they ranked bottom 5 in passing yards, touchdowns, and completion percentage allowed to their opponents. These guys check all the boxes. I love DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson for week 1. I'd be doing you no favors by listing all studs as must-starts for week 1. You're starting them anyway, and this video would just be a waste of your time if that's what I decided to do. So let's turn to Dallas Goedert, who's yet to have a breakout season but could be in store for one this year. Yes, even with Zach Ertz still in town. Everyone's worried about Ertz, and I kind of get it because we weren't sure he'd even be in Philadelphia to start the season. But that shouldn't matter for week 1 when the Eagles head to Atlanta. The Falcons' pass rush was no good last year, and it might even be worse in 2021. Meanwhile, this team allowed a league-worst 294 passing yards per game while tying the Jaguars, Cowboys, and Jets with 34 touchdowns surrendered through the air. That is not the company you want to be in as a defense, but it's a dream matchup for an opposing pass catcher. The Falcons also allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to tight end in 2020, and this could be an issue again. Jalen Hurts peppered his tight ends with targets in the games he started last year. And while Devontae Smith is in town now, we shouldn't expect Hurts to look away from Goedert, who has the speed, agility, athleticism, and the catch radius to make defenses pay. I'm loving this week 1 spot for the 4th-year tight end, and I love Hurts here too, playing in a dome against the bottom-ranked secondary. Take it all around. I generally don't spend much time talking about quarterbacks when it comes to start-sit stuff. You usually play your top guys, and if you don't, there are plenty of streaming options on the waiver if you aren't in a 2-quarterback or superflex league. But I did want to hit on how difficult a matchup Justin Herbert has this week. Not only does he have the dreaded West to East Coast game, but he'll have to face a Washington team that ranked top 5 in both pass coverage and pass rush last year. This game has one of the lowest totals on the entire week, and Washington absolutely neutered aerial attacks last year, with opposing passers averaging an abysmal 192 yards per game. Stick around to the end of the video where I'll give you my top quarterback and defense special team streamers for week 1. It'll come in handy. DeAndre Swift has a pretty miserable matchup to kick off the 2021 campaign, and it isn't just because San Francisco's defense is good. And now that they're healthy again, we should absolutely expect this 49ers team to be solid. Even with myriad injuries last year, they limited opponents to the 4th lowest rushing touchdowns, 6th lowest yards per carry, and 7th fewest yards per game. Swift is ultra talented, but his touchdown equity is massively limited on this Lions team that replaced Matthew Stafford with Jared Goff, has no pass-catching weapons to speak of outside of TJ Hawkinson, and have a paltry 19-point implied total on Sunday. It's also unclear how much work Jamal Williams is going to get early on, as we already know Dan Campbell loves him. The Lions do have a pretty good offensive line, but that probably won't be enough, because their projected to be awful defense should cough up enough points to where Detroit is forced to abandon the run early on. So the one silver lining with Swift is he could see a lot of work as a pass catcher out of the backfield playing catch-up, but there are so many ways this could go wrong. I actually don't think Derek Carr and the Raiders offense get enough respect. They were actually pretty productive last year, but this isn't the week to trust them, specifically the run game with Josh Jacobs. I still think Jacobs was a bargain after his draft stock fell so far this offseason, but the Ravens boast a quality defense, only allowed 12 rushing touchdowns last year, and played at the league's 2nd slowest pace on offense with nearly 30 seconds in between plays. That is really not a good thing for opposing running backs, especially when many of those long Ravens drives ended in touchdowns. We also don't know what Kenyon Drake's role is going to look like, but we do know he should get a lot of 3rd down work. So for week 1, I'm fading Jacobs and paying close attention to how things unfold in the Raiders' backfield. This is just an all-around bad matchup for the Steelers' passing game, but specifically Chase Claypool. He'll be spending a lot of time outside against Tre'Davious White, which is an absolutely brutal matchup, and the Steelers have one of the lowest implied totals of the week at only 20.5. Ben Roethlisberger isn't getting any younger, and Mike Tomlin didn't draft Najee Harris in the 1st round so they could throw 40-plus times per game again. While I love Claypool's future outlook, I'm fading him in week 1. I do, however, think this benefits Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster, though, even with it not being a great matchup. These guys can serve as possession receivers and rack up enough points in PPR formats to still get the job done. But overall, this could be an underwhelming afternoon for the Steelers' aerial attack. Our NFL package was already a value, but this season, we've injected the thing with steroids. Get our Awesemo Plus NFL Express Weekly Pass for only $1 when you use the promo code DAK. That's D-A-K, like the quarterback. Our Express Pass is the best way to introduce yourself to Awesemo Plus NFL, which is more expansive than ever. You get access to player and ownership rankings, our expert Slack chat, and everything we have to offer for showdown and single game contests, including player projections, ownership projections, and the all-new Top Stack tool. And for the first time ever, you'll get our season-long fantasy football coverage, including start-sit rankings, trade value chart, the waiver wire tool, and rest of season projections. Oh, and you're also going to get projected ownership and optimal lineup probabilities for tiers contest on DraftKings. You can't beat this. Again, use the promo code DAK, D-A-K, to access our highest value NFL Express Weekly Pass ever for only $1. The offer is valid through Monday, September 13th. We hope to see you over there. There are a lot of things I don't like about Mike Gesicki this week, starting with the fact that his Dolphins have a 20.5-point implied total and already have too many mouths to feed in this offense. Granted, Will Fuller is suspended for the first week, but with the Patriots defense getting players back who missed most or all of 2020 and having already limited tight ends to the third fewest fantasy points on the year, Gesicki's a pretty easy stay-away option to kick off the season. I'd honestly rather stream Zach Ertz and hope he can ride the same great matchup Goedert in the Eagles passing game has to a solid week. Before we go, here are a couple quarterback streamers that I want to hit at you. Streaming's so important when it comes to fantasy, especially if you're in 2 quarterback leagues and you're desperate, or even single quarterback leagues, because some of these guys are going to be taken in Superflex or 2QB because it's so shallow. But anyway, here we go. Sam Darnold. I know it sounds crazy, but you heard what I said about DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson earlier. You know that Darnold's coming from an awful system to a good one in Carolina. He has Moore, Anderson. You have Terrace Marshall Jr., who, if he gets involved, could make an impact. But more importantly, you've got Christian McCaffrey in the backfield as well. I mean, they are teaming with talent in Carolina on this offense. Sam Darnold's going to have an absolute huge opportunity to put up a big game in his debut against the Jets secondary that should finish towards the bottom of the league last year. And really, there's no chance this guy isn't on the waiver. If you're desperate for a starter, your guy's got an awful matchup, or you just botched the position, Sam Darnold actually makes sense. So does Baker Mayfield against Kansas City. We know that the Chiefs can score at will. We know that they're going to make quick touchdowns and get the ball straight back to Cleveland. That's a great thing. Quicker touchdowns for the offense, going back to the team where you have their quarterback or one of their skill players, particularly in the passing game, is going to give them ample opportunity to do what they can to catch up. But more importantly, time of possession should be big. Now, I'm not in love with Baker Mayfield, but if this game does turn into a shootout or Kansas City goes up early and you have to somewhat abandon the run with your bell cow back like Nick Chubb, and if you do in fact have to resort to the passing game, you have Odell Beckham back, you have Jarvis Landry, you got Kareem Hunt out of the backfield, you have Austin Hooper at tight end. This is a good offense here, and Baker Mayfield may be forced to throw. Lastly, this might sound crazy, but Jimmy Garoppolo, if you're desperate, isn't the craziest option. Now, I'm of the belief that we're going to see a huge amount of rushing attempts for the 49ers in week 1, and I think we will against Detroit, which is why I love Raheem Mostert. But it's also possible that they air it out a little bit early on too, or they just put up enough points to where both the passing game and the run game thrive. We've seen it happen before, and there's no reason to think it can't happen against a paltry Detroit defense and passing game that was dead last in the league last year. So Garoppolo, if you have no other options, you can do a whole lot worse. And it also doesn't hurt to know that he has George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel at his disposal. All right, quickly, we've got a couple defenses here. The Chargers at Washington. I'm a big Ryan Fitzmagic guy. You should be too, but he's a gunslinger. He makes mistakes. This game has one of the lowest totals on the slate, and the Chargers are slight favorites on the road. I don't think it's a crazy thing to assume that you might get a pick six. You might get some turnovers off of Ryan Fitzpatrick. And with the Chargers healthy, this could be one of the better defenses in the league last year that went completely undrafted in fantasy leagues. The Panthers, too, against the Jets. I don't think it's crazy to run out a home team defense against a rookie quarterback and a team that we have seen nothing from thus far. Maybe Zach Wilson's great early on, and maybe Corey Davis and Elijah Moore really turn up the heat. But as of now, I'll take the home favorite against a complete unknown on a Jets team that hasn't been good for years. And the Jaguars against Houston, this is easy. I don't anticipate the Jaguars being any good this year. But if you have no other options, you're playing in a deep league, Well, they are road favorites against the Houston team that has the lowest win total in the league and should be absolutely heinous on offense this year with an inability to move the ball both on the ground or through the air. Sure, they might get some garbage time points, but some turnovers and just overall limiting this offense could be enough for the Jaguars defense to get it done for you in week 1. As always, head over to awesemo.com. Check out everything we've got over there for DFS, for season-long fantasy football, everything we've got on the odds channel, and for sports betting at oddshopper.com. Anything you need, we've got you covered. Awesemo.com, oddshopper.com, you name it. I'm Dave Loughran. Thanks for hanging out as always, and we'll catch you back here for the next one. Peace.